I discovered my house down payment fund of $87,000 had been emptied. My sister Ashley confessed she borrowed it for a luxury car, claiming I can just save again. When I confronted my parents, expecting support, they sided with Ashley, saying she needs it more. Devastated by this betrayal from my entire family, I maintained a calm facade while secretly making a call to the bank. What my family doesn't realize is that the account is directly linked to my parents' retirement fund through a legal arrangement they've forgotten about. For 7 years, I worked tirelessly as a hospital administrator, saving every penny for my dream home. Every birthday check, every tax refund, every bonus, and every raise went straight into my house fund. While my friends splurged on vacations and designer clothes, I shopped sales and drove a 10-year-old Honda that made concerning noises but kept getting me from point A to point B. The dream of having my own place, with a garden where I could grow tomatoes and a spare room for my crafts, kept me going through double shifts and working holidays. I come from a middle-class family in Greenfield, where I was always the responsible one. My sister Ashley is 4 years younger than me, and from the day she was born, she became the center of my parents' universe. Not that I minded much growing up. I understood she was the baby, the one who needed more attention. My parents, Jack and Linda, own Hartford Hardware, a successful local store that's been the cornerstone of our community for over 20 years. Dad is the friendly face at the counter, remembering everyone's name and what project they're working on. Mom handles the books and ordering, making sure the business runs smoothly. They built it from nothing, working 70-hour weeks when we were kids. That's partly why my grandmother Margaret practically raised me. While Mom and Dad were busy with the store and with Ashley, who was a colicky baby and later a child who needed constant attention, Grandma Margaret stepped in. She taught me how to bake apple pies from scratch, how to balance a checkbook, and most importantly, how to stand on my own 2 feet. A woman must always be able to take care of herself, she would say, folding crisp dollar bills into my birthday cards from the time I was 10. 3 years ago, Hartford Hardware almost went under. A big box store opened on the edge of town, and their prices undercut my parents badly. They were too proud to ask for help directly, but I could see the worry lines deepening around Dad's eyes and the way Mom would stare at spreadsheets late into the night. After earning my MBA while working full-time, I had built a good relationship with my bank. Through Marcus, my financial advisor, I helped my parents secure a complex arrangement that saved their business and set up their retirement fund. We created a linked account system that gave them better interest rates because of my excellent credit history and financial stability. I drafted much of the paperwork myself, using knowledge from the law courses I took as electives during my MBA. My parents signed the documents without reading all the fine print, trusting me completely to look after their interests, which I did. The arrangement included specific conditions about fund withdrawals and family financial obligations that seemed unnecessary at the time, but would later prove critically important. Grandma Margaret passed away 6 months ago. She left me $25,000, which completed my house fund goal. With $87,000 saved, I was finally ready to make an offer on a craftsman-style bungalow just 3 blocks from the hospital where I work. It needed some cosmetic updates, but the bones were solid, and the backyard had an apple tree that reminded me of Grandma. I could already imagine myself drinking morning coffee on the front porch, greeting neighbors as they walked by. I had scheduled a meeting with my real estate agent, Brenda, to finalize my offer for the following Monday. On Friday night, I was double-checking my account to make sure everything was in order for the wire transfer. I sat at my small kitchen table in my rented apartment, laptop open, a cup of chamomile tea steaming beside me. I logged in, expecting to see my hard-earned $87,000. The culmination of 7 years of sacrifice and discipline. The balance read $0.00. Grandma Margaret passed away 6 months ago. She left me $25,000, which completed my house fund goal. With $87,000 saved, I was finally ready to make an offer on a craftsman-style bungalow just 3 blocks from the hospital where I work. It needed some cosmetic updates, but the bones were solid, and the backyard had an apple tree that reminded me of Grandma. We created a linked account system that gave them better interest rates because of my excellent credit history and financial stability. I drafted much of the paperwork myself, using knowledge from the law courses I took as electives during my MBA. My parents signed the documents without reading all the fine print, trusting me completely to look after their interests, which I did. I blinked, thinking it must be a website glitch. I refreshed the page. Still zero. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I grabbed my phone and called the bank's 24-hour service line, frantically explaining the situation, convinced I was the victim of some sophisticated hacking scheme. Your first pet's name? And the street you grew up on. Answers only my family would know. My stomach dropped as the truth began to dawn on me. This wasn't a random theft. This was someone I trusted. Sunday night family dinner had been a tradition in our family for as long as I could remember. Every week at 6 o'clock sharp, we gathered at my parents' house for Mom's pot roast or Dad's famous grilled chicken. Even as adults with our own lives, Ashley and I rarely missed these dinners. That Sunday, 2 days after discovering my missing money, I arrived early, my hands shaking as I rang the doorbell. Mom answered, wiping her hands on her apron, looking surprised to see me 30 minutes before our usual time. Christy, you're early, honey. Everything okay? I couldn't even fake a smile. Is Ashley here yet? No. She texted she's running late. Something about picking up dessert. Mom studied my face. What's wrong? You look like you haven't slept. I hadn't. For 2 nights. I'd lain awake, cycling through disbelief, devastation, and rage. Let's wait for everyone, I said quietly, following her into the familiar kitchen that smelled of garlic and rosemary. Dad was watching a football game in the living room. He raised his hand in greeting without looking away from the screen. I sat at the kitchen counter, declining Mom's offers of appetizers or wine, my stomach too knotted to consider food. 20 minutes later, the front door opened, and Ashley breezed in. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane coming from the bakery. She placed a white cardboard box on the counter. Chocolate cheesecake from Martinelli's. That's when I noticed her wrist. A gleaming gold watch that hadn't been there the last time I saw her. Designer, by the look of it. Probably worth several $1,000s. My throat tightened. Nice watch, I managed to say. Is it new? Ashley glanced at her wrist and smiled brightly. Oh, this little thing? Just a congratulations gift to myself. She flipped her long blonde hair over her shoulder. The firm made me junior partner last week. Congratulations, I said automatically, though she had mentioned nothing about an upcoming promotion during our last few conversations. That's wonderful news, honey, Mom exclaimed, pulling Ashley into a hug. Dad appeared from the living room to offer his congratulations too. We should celebrate, he declared. I'll open that special bottle of champagne we've been saving. I watched this scene unfold as if from a great distance, disconnected from the celebration. My sister's promotion would normally be something I'd genuinely celebrate too, but all I could think about was my empty bank account and that expensive watch glinting on her wrist. During dinner, Ashley dominated the conversation with stories about her promotion, her new office with a view, and her increased salary. My parents hung on every word, asking questions and beaming with pride. Nobody seemed to notice I was barely touching my food or that I hadn't spoken for nearly 30 minutes. Finally, during a lull in the conversation, I set down my fork with a clink that seemed unnaturally loud. Ashley, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Do you have something you want to tell me about my house fund? The table went silent. Ashley's smile faltered for just a moment before she composed herself. What do you mean? She asked, taking a sip of champagne. My house fund is empty. $87,000. Gone. Withdrawn by someone who knew my security questions. My first pet's name, Rusty. The street we grew up on, Maple Drive. I looked directly into her eyes. Ring any bells? Ashley glanced at our parents, then back at me. For a moment, She looked like she might continue the charade, but then her shoulders slumped slightly. Okay, fine. I borrowed some money from your account, she admitted. I was going to tell you. Some money? I repeated incredulously. You took all of it, Ashley. Every cent. I needed it, she said defensively. You don't understand the pressure I'm under now. Making partner means looking successful, driving the right car, wearing the right clothes. She gestured at her outfit and the watch. Image is everything in corporate law. What did you spend my $87,000 on? I asked, though I was starting to put the pieces together. Ashley bit her lip, then stood up suddenly. Come outside. I'll show you. We all followed her outside to the driveway. There, parked next to my dad's practical SUV and mom's sedan, sat a gleaming white Mercedes SUV, still with temporary tags. Isn't she beautiful? Ashley said, running her hand along the pristine paint job. A GLE 53 AMG. I got it yesterday. The partners all drive luxury cars, and I couldn't show up in my old Civic anymore. I stared at the vehicle that had swallowed my dream home, my years of sacrifice, my independence. My hands began to shake, and I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. I struggled to breathe normally. You stole my house down payment to buy a car? My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. I didn't steal it, Ashley protested. I borrowed it. I'll pay you back. I promise. My new salary is amazing. When? I demanded. How long will it take you to repay $87,000? Ashley looked uncomfortable. Well, I can't give it all back right away. I have the car payment now, and I needed to update my wardrobe for the new position. And there's the country club membership. The senior partners expected me to join. So you have no plan to pay me back? I concluded flatly. Don't be so dramatic, Christy, Ashley said, rolling her eyes. You're so good with money. You can just save it again. It took you, 7 years? Maybe you can do it in 5 this time. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 7 years of my life, dismissed as if they were nothing. 7 years of declining invitations because I couldn't afford them. Of living in a tiny apartment with noisy neighbors. Of driving a car that broke down regularly. Of working overtime and holidays. All gone because my sister wanted a luxury car. I turned to my parents, who had been watching this exchange in silence. Are you hearing this? I asked them, my voice breaking. She stole my money. 7 years of savings. Gone. The house I was about to buy. Gone. And she thinks it's no big deal. I expected outrage on my behalf. I expected them to demand Ashley return the money immediately, or face consequences. Instead, my father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Christy, honey, try to understand, he began, placing a hand on my shoulder that I immediately shook off. Ashley just made junior partner. This is a critical time in her career. First impressions with the senior partners matter. What about my life? I countered. What about the house I was about to buy? My mother stepped forward. Sweetheart, we know you've worked hard for that money, and we're proud of you for being so responsible. But Ashley has this one chance to make her mark at the firm. You're always so practical. You'll be fine. I stared at them in disbelief. Fine? I was days away from buying my first home. The money is gone. How is that fine? You can keep renting for a while longer, my father suggested. Your apartment is perfectly nice, and Ashley can pay you back a little each month, my mother added. Ashley looked uncomfortable. Well, I can't give it all back right away. I have the car payment now, and I needed to update my wardrobe for the new position. And there's the country club membership. The senior partners expected me to join. Ashley looked uncomfortable. Well, I can't give it all back right away. I have the car payment now, and I needed to update my wardrobe for the new position. And there's the country club membership. The senior partners expected me to join. How much each month? I asked Ashley directly. At $500 a month. It would take over 14 years to repay me. I calculated quickly. Assuming you don't miss payments, or decide you need something else more important. Support each other? I repeated, a horrible realization dawning. Like how you supported me through college? My parents exchanged a quick glance that confirmed my suspicion before I even heard their answer. What are you talking about? My father asked, but his tone was defensive. My college fund, I said. Grandma told me before she died that she and Grandpa had set aside money for both Ashley and me for college. But when I applied for financial aid, I was told my parents had too much income for me to qualify. Yet there was no college fund. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school. Where did that money go? Another uncomfortable silence fell. Finally, my mother sighed. We had to use some of your college fund for family expenses, she admitted. What family expenses? I pressed. Well, when Ashley graduated high school, she needed a car to get to her summer internship, my father explained. And then there were her sorority dues when she started college. You took my college fund to buy Ashley her first car and pay for her sorority? I felt like I might be sick. And you never told me? We meant to replace it, my mother said weakly. But the business had some tough years, and it just wasn't possible. Yet you managed to pay for Ashley's college completely, I pointed out. No loans, no jobs. She wasn't suited for working during school like you were, my father said. You've always been the strong one, the responsible one. So being responsible means I get punished? I asked. I get to work 3 jobs while Ashley gets everything handed to her. And now she gets to steal my house fund with your approval? Nobody's stealing anything, Ashley interjected. And nobody's being punished. God, Christy, why do you always have to be so dramatic? It's just money. Just money. Just 7 years of my life. Just my dream home. Just my independence. I looked at the 3 of them standing there, my family. The people I thought would always have my back. Now united against me. Defending theft because the thief was Ashley, and Ashley always got what she wanted. I need to go, I said quietly, turning toward my car. Christy, don't leave like this, my mother called after me. Stay for dessert. We can talk more about how to resolve this. There's nothing to talk about, I replied without turning around. You've made your position very clear. I got into my old Honda, the one I'd kept, despite having saved enough for a new car years ago because every dollar not spent was a dollar closer to my house. As I pulled away from my childhood home, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My family stood in the driveway, the gleaming white Mercedes beside them, already turning back toward the house as if my departure was a minor interruption to their evening. The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur. I don't even remember stopping at traffic lights or making turns. My mind was spinning with the magnitude of what had happened. Not just the theft of my money, but the revelation that this betrayal had deep roots going back years. Once home, I sat in darkness on my second-hand couch, too numb even to cry. The shock had given way to a hollow feeling in my chest, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just an empty shell. I called Ashley's cell phone repeatedly. The first few times, she sent me to voicemail. When she finally answered around lunchtime, her tone was defensive and irritated. As I stared at the ceiling, watching headlights from passing cars create moving shadows, my mind drifted back 3 years to when I had helped my parents secure their financial future. Hartford Hardware had been struggling for nearly 2 years by then. The big box store had taken a significant chunk of their customer base, and they were barely staying afloat. I was having lunch with Mom when she broke down, admitting they were 3 months behind on their commercial mortgage and facing foreclosure. We're going to lose everything, Christy. She had sobbed quietly in the corner booth of the diner, trying not to attract attention. The store, our retirement savings, maybe even the house. Everything we've worked for, gone. That afternoon, I called Marcus Jensen, my financial advisor at Riverside Bank. Marcus and I had built a solid professional relationship over the years. He had helped me establish my investment strategy and admired my disciplined approach to saving. "Marcus," I had said, "my parents are in trouble, and I need to find a way to help them without jeopardizing my own financial security." 2 days later, we sat in his office, my parents looking small and defeated in the plush chairs across from his impressive desk. Marcus outlined a plan that would restructure their business debt, establish a proper retirement account, and link it to my accounts for better terms. Because of Christie's excellent credit history and financial stability, Marcus had explained, we can offer terms that wouldn't normally be available to a business in your situation. I remember how my father had rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed by the financial terminology. "I don't understand all this banking mumbo-jumbo," he had admitted. "But if Christie thinks it's a good idea, I trust her judgment." My mother had nodded in agreement. "You've always been so good with money, honey. Whatever you think is best." Marcus had slid a stack of documents across the desk. "There are some specific provisions about fund withdrawals and family financial obligations," he'd explained. "Basically, it creates a legal framework that protects all parties involved." My parents had signed where indicated, barely glancing at the fine print. I had read every word, understanding that the arrangement created specific conditions that linked our financial futures together in ways my parents didn't fully grasp. At the time, it had seemed like unnecessary legal coverage for unlikely scenarios. Now, those provisions might be my only hope for justice. As a new day dawned, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I couldn't face making decisions in my role as a hospital administrator when my personal life was in such chaos. I spent the day alternating between periods of disbelief, tears, and rage. I called Ashley's cell phone repeatedly. The first few times, she sent me to voicemail. When she finally answered around lunchtime, her tone was defensive and irritated. "What, Christy?" "I'm in a meeting." "We need to talk about the money, Ashley," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "This isn't something that can wait," she sighed dramatically. "I told you I'll pay you back when I can. I don't know what else you want from me right now." Around midnight, when I finally dragged myself to bed, sleep refused to come. I kept seeing Ashley's dismissive expression, hearing her say, "You can just save it again," as if 7 years of my life meant nothing. I heard my parents' voices, making excuses for her, telling me I was the strong one as if that justified using me as their family's perpetual safety net. "Well, I don't have it," she snapped. "It went to the car and some other expenses I needed to cover from my new position. And technically, I did have access to the account because I knew the security answers." "That's not how access works, and you know it," I countered. "What you did was theft, Ashley." "Oh my God. Are you seriously threatening to call the police on your own sister? Over money? That's low. Even for you." Her voice dripped with disdain. "I worked 7 years for that money," I reminded her, my composure starting to crack. 7 years of sacrifices while you were getting everything handed to you. Even my college fund, apparently. "Ancient history," she dismissed. "Look, I've got to go. I have actual important things to deal with. Some of us have real careers with real responsibilities, not just pushing papers at a hospital." Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at my phone in disbelief, at her dismissal of my career, my life choices, my very real pain. My calls to my parents went similarly. My father was gruff and uncomfortable, repeating that family needs to stick together, and that I should give Ashley some time to get on her feet with the new position. My mother was more sympathetic to my feelings, but ultimately offered no real support, suggesting I try to see things from Ashley's perspective, and reminding me how I'd always been the family's rock. I gave them a week. 7 days to come to their senses, to realize the magnitude of what Ashley had done and what they were condoning. 7 days of anxiety attacks that left me gasping for breath in the middle of the night, of insomnia that had me staring at the ceiling until dawn, of taking more emergency leave from work when I couldn't focus on anything. Each day, I called them. Each day, their responses grew more dismissive. By Thursday, Ashley had stopped answering my calls entirely. My father's tone had shifted from uncomfortable to annoyed, suggesting I was making too big a deal about money. My mother still took my calls, but spent most of the time telling me how stressed Ashley was with her new responsibilities and how proud they were of her accomplishments. On Friday night, scrolling mindlessly through social media in an attempt to distract myself, I saw something that stopped my heart. Ashley had posted photos from a weekend getaway at Lakeside Resort, one of the most exclusive destinations in our state. The photos showed her with our parents, all three smiling broadly on the terrace of a luxury suite, with the gleaming white Mercedes visible in the background of one shot. Test driving the new baby with my awesome parents. Weekend escape to celebrate new beginnings. Read the caption. Several comments down, a friend of Ashley's had asked, "Where's your sister?" Ashley's reply made my blood run cold. "Christy's too busy counting her money to join us. Some things never change. I want my $87,000 back now," I stated firmly. "Not in 14 years at $500 a month. Now, you had no right to take it." For several minutes, I sat frozen, my breath coming in short gasps. Then, with shaking hands, I retrieved my phone and pulled up Marcus's contact information. It was nearly 10 o'clock on a Friday night, but I sent him a text anyway. "Marcus, I have an urgent financial situation related to the family arrangement we set up 3 years ago. Can we talk first thing Monday morning? It's about unauthorized use of my funds." His response came less than a minute later. "Christy, I remember the provisions clearly. Call me tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't worry. The agreement has specific protections for exactly this kind of situation." For the first time in a week, I felt a glimmer of hope. Saturday morning at 9 o'clock sharp, my phone rang. Marcus was punctual, as always. "Christy, what's happened?" he asked after brief greetings. His voice was concerned, but professional. I explained the situation in detail. The emptied house fund, Ashley's cavalier attitude, my parents' support of her actions, and the discovery that this pattern of financial exploitation went back years to my college fund. Marcus was silent for a moment after I finished. "I'm very sorry this has happened to you," he said finally, his tone genuinely sympathetic. "But you're right to remember the provisions we put in place when we created the linked account system. Refresh my memory about the specifics," I requested, reaching for a notepad to jot down details. "The agreement your parents signed created what we call a family financial accountability clause," Marcus explained. "In the case of unauthorized use of linked funds, the primary account holder, that's you, can trigger a review of all connected accounts, including your parents' retirement fund and business accounts. This would freeze those accounts pending investigation." "Freeze their accounts?" I repeated, my pen pausing on the paper. "Yes. It's a serious step, which is why it requires formal documentation of the unauthorized withdrawal," Marcus continued. "But it's designed precisely to protect individuals in situations like yours, where family members might take advantage of their connections to your accounts. What would happen to their business? To their day-to-day finances?" I asked, needing to understand the full implications. "Their business operating account would remain functional for basic expenses, but any major withdrawals would require approval. Their personal accounts and retirement funds would be frozen completely until the matter is resolved. They wouldn't be able to access those funds without addressing the unauthorized withdrawal from your account." I wrote this down, my mind racing with the potential consequences. "And resolution would mean either returning the funds to your account or establishing a formal, legally binding repayment plan With significant collateral, Marcus replied. The bank would mediate, but ultimately you would have considerable leverage in determining acceptable terms. After thanking Marcus and arranging for him to email me the specific documentation I would need to initiate the process, I hung up and sat at my kitchen table, staring at my notes. This was a nuclear option. It would likely destroy my relationship with my family, potentially forever. But they had already shown how little they valued that relationship, how little they respected me or my life goals. I needed to think this through carefully. On a fresh sheet of paper, I created 2 columns: reasons to trigger the clause and reasons not to. Under reasons to do it, I listed getting my money back, standing up for myself, breaking the pattern of being taken advantage of, securing my financial future, and teaching my family that actions have consequences. Under reasons not to, I had potentially permanent damage to family relationships, possible financial hardship for my parents if this affected their business, extended family fallout when everyone inevitably took sides, and the emotional toll of a protracted financial and family conflict. Still uncertain? I called Taylor, my best friend since college. Taylor had been my roommate sophomore year, had seen me working multiple jobs while maintaining a full scholarship GPA, had witnessed firsthand my years of sacrifice. They did what? Taylor exclaimed when I explained the situation. Her outrage on my behalf was validating. And your parents are taking her side? After everything you've done for them? That's beyond messed up, Christy. I know, I agreed. But I'm trying to figure out if triggering this financial clause is too extreme. It would essentially freeze all their major assets until they resolve this. Look, Taylor said firmly. You've been the family fixer and sacrifice for your entire life. They've trained you to put yourself last, to think that standing up for yourself is extreme. It's not. What Ashley did was theft. Plain and simple. And your parents are accomplices. But they're still my family, I said quietly. Family doesn't steal from each other, Taylor countered. Family doesn't dismiss 7 years of your hard work as something you can just do again. They're taking advantage of your love and your good nature, and it has to stop. After talking with Taylor for nearly an hour, I felt stronger but still conflicted. I decided to call Dr. Winters, my therapist whom I'd been seeing on and off for the past couple of years, to help manage work stress and anxiety. Dr. Winters listened carefully to the situation, asking clarifying questions about the pattern of family dynamics over the years. When I finished explaining, she sat silently for a moment, gathering her thoughts. 2 days later, we sat in his office, my parents looking small and defeated in the plush chairs across from his impressive desk. Marcus outlined a plan that would restructure their business debt, establish a proper retirement account, and link it to my accounts for better terms. Yes, I acknowledged. But that's just how our family works. Is it working for you? Dr. Winters asked gently. The question hung in the air. Was it working for me? Had it ever? No, I admitted finally. It's not working for me at all. Still uncertain? I called Taylor, my best friend since college. Taylor had been my roommate sophomore year, had seen me working multiple jobs while maintaining a full scholarship GPA, had witnessed firsthand my years of sacrifice. So you think I should trigger the clause? I asked. I can't make that decision for you, she replied. But I can suggest that you consider what message you're sending if you don't act to protect yourself. Are you communicating that your needs and goals matter as much as everyone else's? Or are you reinforcing the idea that you exist primarily to support others, even at great cost to yourself? By Sunday evening, I had made my decision. But first, I wanted to give my family one final chance. I invited them to my apartment for dinner, something I rarely did, given the small size of my place and the limited seating. To my surprise, they accepted. What we're seeing here is not just a one-time financial issue. Dr. Winters continued. It's the culmination of a family dynamic that has caused you significant emotional harm over many years. Your family has come to expect your sacrifice as the norm, to the point where they feel entitled to your resources. They arrived at 6 o'clock. Ashley immediately complained about the lack of parking near my building and the 3-flight walk up to my unit. My parents brought wine but seemed uncomfortable in my modest apartment, my mother's eyes taking in the water stain on the ceiling and the patched spot on my sofa. During dinner, I carefully explained how important the house fund was to me, how much it represented in terms of sacrifice and dreams for my future. I laid out exactly how long it would take to replace at my current salary and savings rate. I reminded them of how I had helped them when Hartford Hardware was in trouble. I understand Ashley's career is important, I concluded. But so is my life. My goals matter too. I need that money back. Not in small payments over 14 years, but now. My father set down his wine glass. Christy, you know we love you. But Ashley can't just return the money. The car's purchased. The money's spent. What do you expect her to do? Return a brand new car? The depreciation alone would be a huge loss. That's not my problem, I said firmly. She took my money without permission. In any other context, that would be theft. Ashley rolled her eyes dramatically. Here we go with the theft accusation again. It's not like I'm a stranger who broke into your account. We're family. Family helps each other out. Did you help me out by taking my college fund too? I asked, looking directly at my parents. Did you even consider paying that back? I understand Ashley's career is important, I concluded. But so is my life. My goals matter too. I need that money back. Not in small payments over 14 years. But now. That was a different situation, my mother said defensively. We were in a tight spot financially, and Ashley needed reliable transportation for her internship. These things happen in families. They seem to happen only in one direction in our family, I pointed out. I'm always the one expected to sacrifice, to understand, to wait. I'm tired of it. I'm saying actions have consequences, I replied calmly. And there will be consequences for this. Is that a threat? Ashley asked, her eyes narrowing. It's a fact, I corrected her. The money needs to be returned. If it isn't, I'll have to pursue other options. Like what? My father challenged. Are you going to sue your own family? Report us to the police? What kind of daughter does that? The kind who's been taken advantage of for the last time, I answered, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside me. My mother reached across the table to pat my hand. Sweetheart, I know you're upset, and you have every right to be, but this is so extreme. Can't we find a middle ground? Perhaps Ashley could increase her monthly payments? Before I could respond, Ashley interjected. Actually, with all my new expenses, I'm not sure I can commit to $500 a month right away. Maybe we could start at $250 and increase it next year? I stared at her in disbelief. Not only was she not sorry, she was trying to negotiate paying me even less. That's when I noticed something else. Glinting on her wrist next to the expensive watch. A delicate platinum bracelet with what looked like diamond accents. Another new purchase. No doubt. Is that bracelet new too, Ashley? I asked quietly. She instinctively covered it with her other hand. It was on sale, she said defensively. Something inside me snapped. Did you use my money for that too? What else did you buy with my house fund? New clothes? First-class upgrades? That weekend at Lakeside Resort with Mom and Dad? A flash of guilt crossed her face, confirming my suspicions. My parents looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Grandma's inheritance was supposed to be split between us, wasn't it? I asked suddenly, a new suspicion forming. The $25,000 she left me, there was supposed to be the same for Ashley. The stunned silence and exchanged glances told me everything I needed to know. How did you do it? I pressed. How did you convince the executor I didn't deserve my full share? My mother spoke first, her voice small. We didn't say you didn't deserve it. We just told Cousin Frank that you had agreed Ashley needed it more for her career advancement. That you were being generous, as always. Without asking me, I said flatly. Without even telling me. We were going to tell you eventually, my father insisted. Once Ashley was settled in her new position and could start paying you back. I stood up from the table. No longer hungry. No longer interested in maintaining the facade of a civil dinner. I think you should leave now. All of you. Christy, don't be like this, my mother pleaded. We can work this out as a family. We stopped being a functional family the moment you decided my life and my goals didn't matter, I replied. The moment you decided stealing from me was acceptable as long as it benefited the person you actually care about. They left reluctantly. My mother tearful, my father angry, and Ashley sullen. As the door closed behind them, I knew with absolute certainty what I needed to do. First thing Monday morning, I would call Marcus and trigger the clause. Monday morning dawned clear and cold, a perfect October day with leaves turning gold and crimson on the trees lining my street. I had slept surprisingly well. The decision made, the path forward clear. I called Marcus at 8:30, knowing he'd be in his office early. I've made my decision, I told him after we exchanged greetings. I want to trigger the clause. Christy, don't be like this, my mother pleaded. We can work this out as a family. 2 hours later, I sat across from Marcus in his office, signing the formal complaint of unauthorized fund withdrawal. The document detailed the exact amount taken, the date of withdrawal, and included bank records confirming the transaction. What happens next? I asked as I signed the last page. The bank will send official notices to all linked accounts today, informing the holders that their accounts are under review for potential financial impropriety, Marcus explained. The notices will reference the specific clause in the original agreement and outline the potential legal consequences if the matter isn't resolved. How long will their accounts be frozen? Until either the funds are returned to your account or a formal, legally binding resolution is agreed upon by all parties, Marcus said. In cases like these, we typically find that most people move quickly to resolve the situation once they understand the seriousness of their position. I nodded, a mixture of emotions swirling inside me. Satisfaction that action was finally being taken, anxiety about the fallout, sadness that it had come to this, and underneath it all, a surprising sense of empowerment. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was putting myself first, refusing to be the family sacrifice. Exactly what I said I would do if you didn't return my money, I replied calmly. I've triggered the financial accountability clause in the arrangement we set up 3 years ago. I'm prepared, I assured him, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. I didn't have to wait until the next day for the reaction. At 2:15 that afternoon, while I was reviewing staffing schedules in my office at the hospital, my phone began buzzing repeatedly. Text notifications from my parents and Ashley, followed by a series of increasingly frantic calls that I sent to voicemail. I read the texts with a strange sense of detachment. From Dad, "What have you done? The bank says our accounts are frozen. Call me immediately." From Mom, "Christy, please call us right away. There's some problem with the bank. We need your help." From Ashley, "Are you out of your mind? Dad and Mom are freaking out about their accounts. Fix this now." I silenced my phone and returned to my work. I knew confrontation was inevitable, but I wanted it on my terms, not while I was at my workplace trying to be professional. Unfortunately, my family had other ideas. At 4:30, just as I was wrapping up a meeting with the nursing staff, my assistant knocked on the conference room door. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Miss Gardner, but your family is here. They're quite insistent on seeing you immediately. They're waiting in your office." I thanked her and dismissed the meeting, taking a deep breath to center myself before walking to my office. Through the glass wall, I could see them. My father pacing back and forth, his face flushed with anger. My mother perched anxiously on the edge of a chair, and Ashley standing with her arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently. I'm sorry to interrupt, Miss Gardner, but your family is here. They're quite insistent on seeing you immediately. They're waiting in your office. I'm sorry to interrupt, Miss Gardner, but your family is here. They're quite insistent on seeing you immediately. They're waiting in your office. I don't care where we are, he shouted, though he did modulate his volume slightly. Our retirement account is frozen. The business account has restrictions. We can't access our own money. What have you done? Exactly what I said I would do if you didn't return my money, I replied calmly. I've triggered the financial accountability clause in the arrangement we set up 3 years ago. What clause? What are you talking about? My mother's voice was high with panic. The clause in the paperwork you signed, I explained. It specifically states that in the case of unauthorized use of linked funds, the primary account holder, me, can initiate a review that freezes connected accounts pending resolution. This is insane, Ashley interjected, her face a mask of indignation. You're punishing Mom and Dad because you're mad at me? What kind of person does that to their own parents? I gave all of you multiple chances to make this right, I reminded them. You chose to ignore me. You chose to dismiss my feelings and my financial future as unimportant. This is the consequence of those choices. We could lose everything, my father said, his anger giving way to fear. The store, our retirement, everything we've worked for. My mother began to cry, soft, hiccuping sobs that would normally have had me rushing to comfort her. How could you do this to us, Christy? After everything we've done for you? Please enlighten me about these sacrifices, I replied, my voice taking on an edge. I'd love to hear about them. I gave all of you multiple chances to make this right, I reminded them. You chose to ignore me. You chose to dismiss my feelings and my financial future as unimportant. This is the consequence of those choices. The notices will go out today, and they should receive them by tomorrow morning at the latest, Marcus continued. I should warn you that the initial reaction is often emotional. People tend to respond with anger before acceptance. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. You took my college fund for Ashley. You gave my inheritance to Ashley. You stood by while she took my house fund, and then told me to just deal with it. Tell me, what have you done for me that compares to what I've done for all of you? It's not blackmail. It's a contractual remedy for financial misconduct, I corrected her. And yes, the accounts will remain frozen until my money is returned or a satisfactory, legally binding repayment plan is established. The notices will go out today, and they should receive them by tomorrow morning at the latest, Marcus continued. I should warn you that the initial reaction is often emotional. People tend to respond with anger before acceptance. You have assets, I pointed out. The vacation property at Pine Lake. Investment accounts. Ashley has a brand new luxury car she clearly can't afford. We don't have $87,000 just sitting around, my father exploded. If we did, don't you think we'd give it to you to end this nightmare? You have assets, I pointed out. The vacation property at Pine Lake. Investment accounts. Ashley has a brand new luxury car she clearly can't afford. Then you understand exactly how I felt when I discovered my house fund was gone, I replied. Everything I worked for. Gone in an instant. Taken by someone I trusted. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. That's your choice to make. My choice was to stop being your personal piggy bank. I can't believe you're being so selfish, my mother sobbed. After everything we've sacrificed for you, you expect me to sell my car? Ashley asked incredulously. I need it for work. Before any of them could respond, my assistant knocked on the door again. Miss Gardner, your 4:45 appointment is here. Should I ask them to wait? I looked at my watch, grateful for the interruption. No need. My family was just leaving. This isn't over, my father warned as they reluctantly moved toward the door. You have no idea what you've started. Actually, I do, I replied. I've started standing up for myself. Finally. This isn't over, my father warned as they reluctantly moved toward the door. You have no idea what you've started. My mother began to cry, soft, hiccuping sobs that would normally have had me rushing to comfort her. How could you do this to us, Christy? After everything we've done for you? I silenced my phone and returned to my work. I knew confrontation was inevitable, but I wanted it on my terms, not while I was at my workplace trying to be professional. I started to type a response explaining the truth, then stopped. Those who were willing to believe I would vindictively attack my parents without cause weren't interested in my side of the story. They had already made up their minds based on the family narrative that Christy is responsible. Christy is strong. Christy will sacrifice. Well, not anymore. 2 days later, Marcus called with an update. The investigation has uncovered something you should know about, he said, his tone carefully neutral. There have been multiple small, unauthorized transfers from your accounts over the past 3 years. What? I sat up straighter in my chair. What kind of transfers? That evening, the fallout expanded. My phone buzzed continuously with messages and calls from extended family members. Apparently, my parents and Ashley had wasted no time in spreading their version of events. According to them, I had maliciously frozen my parents' accounts over a small misunderstanding about a loan to Ashley. $15,000? I repeated, stunned. On top of the $87,000 Ashley took? Yes. We've traced the transfers to your parents' personal account and Ashley's checking account. They've been occurring since shortly after we established the linked account system. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Ashley stolen my house fund, but my parents had been systematically skimming from my accounts for years. They had been using my excellent credit and financial responsibility as a safety net all along, taking advantage of my trust in small increments that I hadn't noticed amid my regular deposits and automatic transfers to savings. Can those funds be recovered as well? I asked, my voice hollow. Yes. They'll be included in the total amount for restitution, Marcus assured me. All of this will be documented for the formal meeting we're scheduling with all parties next week. My father stepped closer to my desk, his expression shifting from anger to threat. If you don't fix this right now, you are no longer our daughter. Do you understand me? 1. You will be cut out of this family forever. It was time to break that system for good. The bank's conference room was imposingly formal, with a long mahogany table surrounded by high-backed leather chairs. I arrived 15 minutes early, wanting to compose myself before facing my family again. Marcus met me in the lobby and escorted me upstairs, reviewing the agenda for the meeting. The bank's legal representative will be present, along with a mediator, he explained. We'll present the evidence of unauthorized withdrawals, including both the recent large sum and the ongoing smaller transfers. Then we'll outline the options for resolution. I nodded, smoothing my blazer and checking that my portfolio contained all the documentation I'd prepared. I'd taken particular care with my appearance today, wearing a tailored charcoal suit that projected professionalism and confidence. No longer the family doormat, I was determined to present myself as what I truly was, a competent, successful woman who deserved respect. At exactly 10 o'clock, the receptionist showed my family into the room. My parents entered first, looking tense but composed, followed by Ashley, who avoided meeting my eyes. To my surprise, my cousin Jake was with them, dressed in a suit with a leather briefcase. Jake had become a lawyer 5 years ago, specializing in family law. Apparently, they'd brought their own legal counsel. Good morning, said Marcus, standing to greet them with professional courtesy. Please take your seats. I'm Marcus Jensen, Miss Gardner's financial advisor. This is Elaine Winters from our legal department, and Robert Chen, who will be mediating today's discussion. Everyone took their places, creating 2 clear sides of the table. My parents and Ashley sat together with Jake beside them, while I sat between Marcus and Miss Winters. with Mr. Chen at the head of the table. Before we begin, Jake said immediately, my clients wanted on record that they object to this entire proceeding. The freezing of their accounts has caused significant hardship and emotional distress, and we reserve the right to pursue damages for this overreaction to what is essentially a family matter. Your objection is noted, Miss Winters replied coolly. However, as you'll see in the documentation we're providing, this family matter involves unauthorized withdrawal of substantial funds, which triggers specific contractual remedies clearly outlined in the agreement all parties signed 3 years ago. She slid copies of the original agreement across the table, with relevant sections highlighted. Jake took his copy and began reviewing it carefully, a slight frown forming as he read. Now, Mr. Chen said, taking control of the meeting, let's establish the facts of the situation. Mr. Jensen, would you please present the financial evidence? Marcus nodded and opened a folder. Our investigation has documented the following unauthorized withdrawals from Miss Gardner's accounts. First, on October 15th of this year, a withdrawal of $87,000 was made from Miss Gardner's house down payment fund. This withdrawal was executed using Miss Gardner's account information and security questions, but not by Miss Gardner herself. He slid copies of the bank records across the table, showing the transaction details. Additionally, he continued, our investigation revealed a pattern of smaller, unauthorized withdrawals dating back 3 years, totaling $14,800. These withdrawals were made approximately monthly in amounts ranging from $100 to $500. More documentation followed, showing each of the smaller transactions, with dates and amounts clearly listed. The total unauthorized withdrawal amount is $101,800, Marcus concluded. A heavy silence fell over the room. My parents stared at the documents in apparent shock, while Ashley shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Jake was reading rapidly through the transaction records, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Could we have a moment to review these materials? Jake asked, his professional demeanor slightly strained. Of course, Mr. Chen agreed. Take 10 minutes to confer with your clients. The total unauthorized withdrawal amount is $101,800, Marcus concluded. When they returned to the table, Jake cleared his throat. Regarding the large withdrawal of $87,000, my client, Ashley Gardner, acknowledges that she accessed her sister's account using security information she was familiar with as a family member. However, she maintains that she intended this as a loan, not theft, and had plans to repay the amount over time. And the additional $14,800 in smaller withdrawals? Miss Winters prompted. Jake glanced uncomfortably at my parents. My clients Jack and Linda Gardner state that they believed these smaller transfers were authorized under the family financial arrangement. They understood the linked accounts to mean shared access for family needs. That is categorically false, Marcus interjected firmly. The linked account structure was created for interest rate benefits and emergency access provisions, not for regular withdrawals without the primary account holder's knowledge or consent. Page 3. Section 4 of the agreement specifically prohibits unauthorized transfers between accounts. Jake scanned the indicated section, then conferred quietly with my parents again. When he turned back to the table, his demeanor had shifted subtly. May I ask what resolution Miss Gardner is seeking? He inquired, his tone suggesting he was now looking for compromise rather than confrontation. Miss Winters turned to me, giving me the floor to present my terms. I opened my portfolio and withdrew the document I had prepared. I require full restitution of all unauthorized funds, totaling $101,800. I stated clearly. I recognize that immediate repayment of the full amount may not be possible, so I'm proposing the following terms. The sale of my parents' vacation property at Pine Lake, which according to recent comparable sales should net approximately $70,000, to be transferred directly to my account. My father started to protest, but Jake quieted him with a hand on his arm. Additionally, I continued, Ashley will take a bank loan against her new vehicle to cover $20,000 of the remaining amount, to be paid to me immediately upon loan approval. Ashley's face flushed with anger, but she remained silent. The final $11,800 will be repaid through monthly payments of $1,000 until the debt is cleared, I concluded. These payments will be secured by a formal promissory note with legal consequences for default. Jake reviewed my proposal, then turned to confer with my family again. Their discussion was more heated this time, with my father gesturing emphatically and my mother dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Ashley sat with her arms crossed, staring stonily at the table. After several minutes, Jake addressed the mediator. We'd like to counter with an alternative arrangement. My clients propose liquidating some of their stock investments rather than selling the vacation property. This would provide approximately $50,000 immediately. Ashley is willing to take a loan against her vehicle as suggested, but for $15,000 rather than $20,000. The remaining amount would be paid at $500 monthly, which is more manageable for their budget. I shook my head firmly. The vacation property must be part of the resolution. The stocks have been underperforming for years, based on my father's own complaints, and wouldn't provide adequate compensation. $500 monthly would extend repayment for over 6 years, which is unacceptable. Finally, Mr. Chen called for a break. I suggest all parties take 30 minutes to consider their positions. Perhaps some refreshment and reflection will help us reach a resolution. Additionally, I continued, Ashley will take a bank loan against her new vehicle to cover $20,000 of the remaining amount, to be paid to me immediately upon loan approval. After several minutes, Jake addressed the mediator. We'd like to counter with an alternative arrangement. My clients propose liquidating some of their stock investments rather than selling the vacation property. This would provide approximately $50,000 immediately. Ashley is willing to take a loan against her vehicle as suggested, but for $15,000 rather than $20,000. During the break, I went to a small cafe across the street from the bank. As I waited for my tea, I checked my phone and found a text message from my cousin Jake. Can we talk privately for a moment? Just you and me. Christy, he began awkwardly. I need to tell you something as your cousin, not as their lawyer. I didn't know the full situation when I agreed to represent them. I thought this was some kind of misunderstanding or bank error. And now? I asked. He sighed heavily. Now I've seen the documentation, and I've heard their explanations, and I can't effectively defend their position because legally, they don't have one. What they did was wrong, Christy. The large withdrawal, the pattern of smaller ones, all of it. Thank you for acknowledging that, I said quietly. I'm going to advise them to accept your terms, Jake continued. Fighting this would only cost them more in the long run, both financially and legally. But there's something else you should know. During our discussions, your mother said something that might help explain, though not excuse, some of this behavior. The negotiation continued for nearly an hour, with proposals and counterproposals exchanged across the table. Throughout, I remained calm but utterly firm on my core requirements. Substantial, immediate repayment, sale of the vacation property, and a reasonable timeline for full restitution. She mentioned that when you were born, your parents faced serious financial trouble. Your father's first business failed, and they nearly lost everything. They developed a deep fear about money that manifested in some unhealthy ways, including prioritizing financial security for Ashley, whom they saw as less capable than you, and leaning on you as their safety net because you were always the strong one. Jake looked uncomfortable sharing this. Again, it doesn't justify what they did, but it might help you understand the root of these dysfunctional patterns. What did she say? I asked, curious despite myself. When we reconvened after the break, the atmosphere in the conference room had shifted. My family seemed less combative, more resigned. Jake presented their response to my terms. My clients are prepared to accept the following resolution. Sale of the Pine Lake property, with proceeds transferred directly to Miss Christy Gardner's account. A vehicle loan taken by Ashley Gardner for $18,000, also to be transferred to Miss Gardner immediately upon approval. The remaining balance to be paid in monthly installments of $800 until fully satisfied, secured by a formal promissory note as requested. I nodded my acceptance of these terms. I also require that all links between my accounts and my family's accounts be permanently severed, with no possibility of future reconnection. That's reasonable, Jake agreed. We'll include that in the formal agreement. The mediator looked pleased. Excellent. Miss Winters will draft the formal agreement today, and we can reconvene tomorrow for signatures. Once the agreement is signed, the process of unfreezing accounts can begin, contingent on the initiation of the property sale and loan application. As the meeting concluded, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. We had reached a resolution, but the emotional damage remained unaddressed. After everyone else had filed out, I found myself alone with my family for the first time since our confrontation in my office. My mother spoke first, her voice small and uncertain. Christy, could we talk? Just us? As a family? I hesitated, then nodded. There's a private meeting room available down the hall. Once we were seated in the smaller room, an awkward silence stretched between us. Finally, my mother reached across the table toward me, though she stopped short of actually taking my hand. I know you probably won't believe this right now, but we do love you, Christy, she said softly. What we did was wrong. There's no excuse for it. Then why did you do it? I asked, needing to hear them acknowledge the pattern, not just this single incident. My father cleared his throat. Jake told you about our financial troubles when you were born? When I nodded, he continued, it did something to us. That fear of losing everything. I started seeing everything in terms of security, of protecting what we had. But you didn't protect me, I pointed out. You protected Ashley, at my expense. We thought you didn't need protection, my mother admitted. You were always so capable, so responsible. From the time you were little, you figured things out, solved problems. Ashley struggled with everything. We convinced ourselves we were balancing things, giving more help to the child who needed it more. That doesn't explain taking my money, I said firmly. That goes beyond helping Ashley more. That's actively harming me to benefit her. Ashley, who had been silent until now, looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usual confidence absent. I knew it was wrong, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Taking your house fund. I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway because I always could. I always got away with everything where you were concerned. Mom and Dad always took my side, always made excuses for me, always expected you to understand and forgive. Her honesty surprised me. It was perhaps the first time I could remember Ashley taking responsibility for her actions without deflection or excuse. When the bank investigation found those smaller withdrawals, my father said heavily, it forced us to face what we've been doing all these years. Using you as our safety net, taking advantage of your responsibility and success. It's not right. And it's not the parents we thought we were. We're going to get help, my mother added. Jake recommended a family therapist who specializes in unhealthy financial dynamics in families. We've already made an appointment. I sat with their words, feeling the weight of decades of family patterns finally being acknowledged. I appreciate your honesty, I said finally, but understanding the pattern doesn't immediately heal the harm it's caused. I need time. And I need to know that real change is happening. Not just words in a moment of being caught. That's fair, my father nodded. More than fair, given what we've done. I'm also getting help, Ashley said quietly. A financial counselor Jake recommended. I need to understand why I feel entitled to things I haven't earned. Why I resent your success, instead of admiring it. As we left the bank, there was no warm reconciliation, no tearful group hug like in the movies. Instead, there was something perhaps more valuable. The first honest conversation we'd ever had as a family. The first acknowledgement of destructive patterns that had shaped all our lives. It wasn't an ending, but perhaps a beginning of something healthier. 6 months passed quickly. Winter turned to spring, bringing new growth and renewal that seemed fitting for the changes in my life. The resolution agreement had been honored in full. My parents sold the Pine Lake property. Ashley secured a loan against her car, and the monthly payments had arrived punctually, gradually restoring my stolen funds. With the money recovered, I had been able to resume my house search. Though the craftsman bungalow I'd originally planned to buy had long since sold to another buyer. In the end, I found something even better. A charming 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood, with a main house upstairs and a separate apartment on the ground level that I could rent out for additional income and security. Today was my housewarming party. As I arranged a tray of appetizers in my new kitchen, sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked a backyard, with raised garden beds I'd already planted, with vegetables and herbs. The house wasn't perfect, the upstairs bathroom needed updating, and the kitchen cabinets were outdated, but it was mine, earned through years of hard work and finally standing up for myself. The doorbell rang. Taylor arrived first, bearing a potted plant and a bottle of champagne. "For your new beginning?" she said with a warm hug. "I'm so proud of you, Christy. Look at this place. It's perfect for you." Other friends arrived. Colleagues from the hospital. Neighbors I'd already met. The house filled with conversation and laughter, the kind of warm, supportive energy I'd been cultivating more intentionally in my life over the past months. At 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang again. I opened it to find my parents and Ashley standing uncertainly on the porch, each holding housewarming gifts. "Come in," I said, stepping back to allow them entry. Our relationship remained in a fragile, rebuilding phase. We'd had several sessions with the family therapist, conversations that were often difficult and painful but necessary. I had maintained firm boundaries throughout, refusing to slip back into old patterns even as we worked toward healing. My mother handed me a wrapped package. "It's nothing fancy," she said. "Just some kitchen towels and pot holders I thought would match your color scheme." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the gift with a genuine smile. "The kitchen is still a work in progress, but these will help." My father looked around appreciatively. "You've done well for yourself, Christy. This is a smart investment with the rental unit downstairs." "I have a tenant moving in next week," I told him. "A nurse from the hospital. The rental income will help with the mortgage and give me extra security." Ashley hung back slightly, seeming unsure of her welcome despite my invitation. When the others moved toward the living room to join the party, she approached me privately. "I brought you this," she said, handing me a small gift bag. Inside was a check, along with a handwritten note. "What's this?" I asked, examining the check. "It was for $3,000. It's beyond what the agreement requires," Ashley explained. "I've been meeting with the financial counselor weekly, and part of my recovery process is making genuine amends, not just what I'm legally obligated to do. I got a performance bonus at work, and I wanted you to have it. No strings, no expectations." I was touched by the gesture, recognizing how significant it was coming from Ashley. "Thank you. That means a lot. I'm also selling the Mercedes," she added. "It's too expensive. And honestly, I don't need it. I'm going back to something more practical. Using the difference to pay down the loan faster and start building my own emergency fund, like the counselor suggested." Her voice held none of the resentment or entitlement I would have expected 6 months ago. Instead, there was a new maturity, a recognition of reality rather than the fantasy lifestyle she'd been trying to maintain. "That sounds like a wise decision," I said. "I know we have a long way to go," Ashley continued, "but I want you to know I'm serious about changing." about being a sister you can trust, not just someone who takes from you. I appreciate that, I replied honestly. Trust takes time to rebuild, but I can see you're making real efforts. Throughout the afternoon, I observed my family interacting with my friends. There was an awkwardness to it, the discomfort of people trying to find new ways to relate after old patterns had been shattered. But there were good moments too. My father discussing home improvement plans with my neighbor Fred, my mother helping arrange food in the kitchen without taking over, Ashley engaging in genuine conversation with Taylor without competing or dominating. As evening approached and guests began to leave, I found myself alone in the kitchen with my mother, as she helped load the dishwasher. "This is a lovely home, Christy," she said, carefully arranging glasses on the top rack. "It suits you perfectly." "Thank you," I replied, wrapping leftover cheese to store in the refrigerator. After a moment of comfortable silence, she spoke again. "I've been thinking a lot about your grandmother lately, about how she stepped in when you were little, when your father and I were so caught up in the store and in Ashley." I nodded, memories of Grandma Margaret still bittersweet after her passing. "She saw what we didn't," my mother continued softly. "That you needed attention and love too, not just responsibility. She told me once that I was missing the chance to know an extraordinary daughter because I was too busy worrying about the other one. She was right. She was a wise woman, I agreed, unexpectedly moved by this acknowledgement. "I hope it's not too late," my mother said, her eyes meeting mine. "For us to really know each other, I mean. The real you, not just the responsible daughter we took for granted." "It's not too late," I assured her. "Different. Yes. Changed. Definitely. But not too late." After everyone had gone and I was alone in my new home, I walked through each room, appreciating the space that was entirely mine, earned through my own efforts and protected by my newfound strength. The past 6 months had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. I had learned to set boundaries, to value my own dreams as highly as others, to require respect rather than hoping for it. In my bedroom, I unpacked the last box of personal items. At the bottom was a framed photograph of my grandmother, taken on her 70th birthday. Her eyes crinkled with laughter, her hands strong and capable from a lifetime of work and care. I placed it on my bedside table, a reminder of the woman who had taught me that standing on my own feet didn't mean standing alone. The lessons of the past year had been painful but profound. I had discovered that true family relationships must be built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. That financial agreements, even with family, should be documented and clear. That standing up for oneself isn't selfish but necessary for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I had learned that my needs and dreams were just as valid and important as anyone else's. As I settled into bed that night in my new home, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been difficult, the confrontations painful, but the outcome was worth it. I had not only recovered my money but had also gained something far more valuable: self-respect, clear boundaries, and relationships based on truth rather than manipulation. The road ahead with my family would not be easy. Old patterns die hard, and there would likely be setbacks along the way. But for perhaps the first time, we were all walking the path with open eyes, aware of the destructive dynamics that had shaped our interactions for decades, and committed to creating something healthier. Money can be replaced, but the confidence that comes from standing up for yourself, from refusing to be taken advantage of, from requiring respect rather than settling for scraps of consideration, that is truly priceless. And that was something no one could ever take from me again. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who were taking advantage of you? What boundaries did you set? And how did it change your relationships? Please share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories of personal growth and family dynamics. Thank you for listening, and I hope you find the courage to honor your own worth in all your relationships.